Okay. All right. That's for Tammy's mom, my mother-in-law, my good old Marjorie. She developed a bleed about 2 weeks ago now, and was in hospital for several days. And Tammy is there with her now, and we're at her house now at where she lives. And she's very, very weak, and so Tammy's trying to kind of help her to get to eating and that type of thing, and do some cajoling, I guess you might say. So we'll be looking to see her getting better here over the next week or so, and hopefully Tammy will be back here pretty soon. I don't think she plans to stay long. Anything else going? Yes, sir.
The soundboard came in.
The soundboard came in. Yay! Charlie's been waiting for that soundboard just eagerly now for, 3 months?
3 months.
Yeah. So it's been a little while. We're really glad to hear that it's here. I'm praising the Lord that we saw Marissa Russell and her son Cody Peterson here Sunday, and got to see Landon Pennington and Brittany Werther here in church Sunday. That was all very good. We had another visitor. Her name is I'll know it in a minute. Darlene, that's it. Darlene Davis, I believe it is. She is Ruth Burnside's daughter. So we got to see several visitors here Sunday. That was really great. So more like that all the time is good.
They buried my brother-in-law and my sister today, I think today.
Your brother-in-law
Yeah.
and your sister?
My sister, they put her urn in his casket.
Okay. And that was Lucy?
No, Lucy lives over here in Oklahoma. She's still alive.
Okay.
That was Sandra.
Oh, Sandra, okay. Okay. Well, we'll be praying for your comfort and your family's comfort. Okay, let's have prayer. Father God, it is our privilege to come to you praying and rejoicing too. We rejoice in the light of Jesus our Savior, that whenever we meet in here, we meet in His presence because we want to meet in His name. We just announce that, and we say that all the time, and we mean it. We just do rejoice that He has agreed to be with us even now while we are gathered here. We just prayed, Father, that as you are hearing us, that you will take care of these, our needs that we have expressed. And we just pray that you be with, of course, with Tammy as she travels to and from, or rather travels from now, from St. Joseph. We pray that you would protect and guide her. I pray that you would be with Brittany Werther as she continues to think thoughts towards you and to struggle with things that are in her life. I pray that you would protect and guide her and Landon both. Pray that thank you for them being with us Sunday. We just praise you that you'll continue to help direct and guide, and we praise you, Father. We just praise you. We praise you for each person that gathered with us Sunday. We thank you for Cody and for his mother Marissa that were here. Thank you for the good time we were able all to have out in our bowling, and that we were able to do that safely and just have such good fellowship doing that. Father, we praise you. We praise you mightily for those things. And we want to pray also for, of course, for Tammy's mom, that you would indeed heal her, that you would comfort her and guide her, that you will help her to get well entirely. We pray that you will be with Al and with the rest of his family and friends who are We're grieving the loss of Sandra and her husband, and we just ask you to just reach out to those and touch their hearts and give them healing. We do pray for everyone who is suffering loss right now, that they will make their turn toward you with their grief and get counsel from you, because I believe, Father, that death was made in part to make us reflect about life and to draw us back to you when we have strayed. So I just pray for these that are suffering grief and loss, that they will reach that. We do pray for the people who are losing in such a huge fashion in the European theater right now. We just pray that you would strengthen all of the people, whether they're Russians or Ukrainians or whatever they are. Just bless them and help them to find peace in this difficult, horrible hour. I pray that our eyes will not be blind to the many other wars and tribulations that are happening throughout the whole earth, and not just in that quarter, that you'd help us to be constantly praying about all areas because there are so many. And we pray for guidance in this country. We pray for our lawmakers and for those who are supposed to be leaders to us. We pray that you will strengthen them and give them insight, wisdom, and help during the time that they have a career doing those things. We pray, Father, that you will strengthen us, give us the courage and the conviction to do right and speak right in all of these cases, and help us to draw all men to the Christ as we lift him up before them. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, tonight we are going to continue with John, the back end of John 11. Just to kind of review a little bit, I'll go through it lickety-split, and then we'll get into 12 and continue on in 12. Calling this Lazarus the aftermath and then the triumphal entry. We may get a bit further than that, I do not know. I want to remind you that when we were talking about Lazarus' resurrection, we were here in this Bethany. Jesus had come from that one over to this one, so that was in our lesson. Therefore, many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw what he had done believed in him. This is after Lazarus was raised from the dead. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them the things which Jesus had done. Therefore, the chief priests and Pharisees convened a council and were saying, "What are we doing? For this man is performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, all men will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." Very important to understand that many people thought that there might be a Roman takeover, and indeed, as I mentioned, some 40 years later, there actually was a Roman takeover going forward. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you take into account that it is expedient for you that one man die for the people, and that the whole nation not perish." Now, of course, Caiaphas had in mind that in saying this, that, boy, let's go kill Jesus, because if we can kill Jesus, well, then he'll be out from under our bonnet, so to speak. We'll get that bee out from underneath our bonnet. We'll not have these troubles. We won't bring the Romans down on our heads. So if we can just get rid of this one guy, we won't be destroyed. But that's not, when he spoke this, God was actually using him in this wise. Now, he did not say this on his own initiative, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation. And not for the nation only, but in order that he might also gather together into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. And that, of course, I believe means you and me. So from that day on, they planned together to kill him. That is, they planned, Caiaphas and his gang decided we're going to kill Jesus. I want to throw this up into the light of the time, again, this statement that I made last week. Try not for too long to imagine how ghastly it must have been to meet and plan the death of a man the crowds loved. The crowds loved Jesus. they just absolutely adored him. They came after him. They wanted to be around him. They wanted to hear him. And these men planned to do away with him. Therefore, Jesus no longer continued to walk publicly among the Jews, but went away from there to the country near the wilderness into a city called Ephraim, and there he stayed with his disciples. We asked, why was Jesus avoiding the Jews? Here he is up here in Ephraim. You can see it circled here in red, perhaps. That's, we think, where he would have been. So that's where he went. Why did he go away with his disciples? All about timing, isn't it? All about timing. Jesus has decided that what God wants him to do is to die for the sins of the world, and he's chosen the moment that it will fulfill Old Testament, and to fulfill Old Testament has to happen around Passover. And so he's got, in a certain sense, to manage his own death. He's got to time it right. And so this is part of the way that he goes about that. Now the Passover of the Jews was near, and many went up to Jerusalem out of the country before the Passover to purify themselves. This is a process that what people did was they would go up, as I get it, they came up towards Jerusalem, and then as they went up this hill towards the temple, you can still find these today, that along that hillside are remains of baths that they went up and they would go and purify themselves ceremonially, and possibly there's some meaning you might derive regarding baptism there too, that this was not such an unusual thing in the Hebrew culture at that time, because it's part of what they did to cleanse themselves for temple worship. So they were seeking for Jesus and were saying to one another as they stood in the temple, what do you think, that he will not come to feast at all, come to the feast at all? What kind of emotions might have been behind the words of these Jews when they say, what do you think, that he will not come to the feast at all?
Emotion?
Yeah, what kind of emotions or thoughts?
Well, they're scheming to get him.
Okay, some of them were kind of, well, man, I hope he comes. We got to kill this guy.
You're thinking he won't? Well, he always did before, right? That, to me, that's what.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's partly what's going on. So, if there are those who are seeking for Jesus, some are seeking, there might be another crowd that's seeking for Jesus because, you know, they've really liked to hear what he said, I suppose. But I think that the common element here is what the scheming that's been going on, and their interest is in getting him. Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was to report it so they might seize him. Try to imagine, I say, the tensions in the temple. And what do I mean? Well, suppose you're a Jew, maybe like Nicodemus, that really appreciated Jesus, listened to him, and got a lot from what he said, loved to hear him, was just astonished at the great miracles that he'd done, and you were thinking in your thoughts, your kind of quiet moments, can this be the Messiah? This is so wonderful that this is happening in our nation. And then the same day you're sitting there thinking about, well, is Jesus coming up, and am I going to get to see him again? Somebody taps you on the shoulder, real official-like, and says, listen here. Now, if you see Jesus, you got to come and tell us where he is. I guarantee you that conversation went on. This is evidence right here. Chief priests and Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was to report it so they might see this. John 12. Here we'll slow down because we've really come to past what we were doing last Wednesday. So John 12, verse 1. Jesus, therefore, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. And right here, we have Ephraim. This is where he was. So he comes down here to Bethany. Comes to visit who? Who lives here in Bethany?
Lazarus and his.
Lazarus and who?
Mary.
Mary and who?
Martha.
Martha. Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. So that's who he's come to visit down here in Bethany. And I think he must have spent probably a lot more time than merely this time that's recorded in John there. He seems to have quite a friendship going with them. So they made him a supper there, and Martha was serving, but Lazarus was one of those reclining at the table with him. And I happen to love this particular painting. I don't know if you can see it very well from there. If you can't, turn around and look at the one in the back. It's sharper. There's Mary right there. She's got her hair all over Jesus's feet, and there's Jesus. And then I'd like you to try to pick out which one of these guys is going to be Judas, these three, and which one of them is Lazarus. I don't know. I'm just asking you to pick it out. Decide. Mary then took, it says, a pound of very costly perfume of pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair.
This isn't his mother, Mary, right?
No. This is Mary, sister to Martha, sister to Lazarus.
Okay.
So they must have been people of some wealth, or she wouldn't have had a pound of nard. So this house is probably a pretty nice house, which is not a bad thing for you to see in this, to think when you see this painting. You know, you go, gosh, look at that couch he's resting on. Isn't that nice? And maybe some of the decor in the background a little bit. That would have been appropriate, because that probably was a pretty nice house. You didn't have a pound of nard laying around if you didn't have some money. Mary then took a pound. Okay, we already said that. And the house, it says, was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Don't you know that? Just kind of put yourself in that setting and think, now, you know, I'm sitting here and we're talking, maybe getting ready for lunch or whatever we're doing. And all of a sudden, we see this kind of strange commotion at Jesus' feet. Don't think too much of it. People are always messing around over there. And pretty soon this smell starts coming up. And you're just going, wow, that smells nice. Wow. And the whole house just fills up with this smell. It says, but Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, who was intending to betray him, says, there's your electric asterisk, puts it in the present tense, why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and given to poor people? What were you wasting this on his feet for anyway? Don't you know? If you wanted to give something like that away, why don't you sell it and give us the money? We don't have enough money in our coffers here in the disciple hall of whatever it was. So this is his idea, his statement. And again, you can try to decide which one that is. It might be this guy. He seems to be talking. I kind of think it's this guy right here, because he's talking, you know, making a snide remark about, man, we could have had 300 denarii if she'd have not wasted it on his feet. Now he said this is Iscariot. Now he said this not because he was concerned about the poor, but because he was a thief. And he had the money box. He used to pilfer what was put into it. What is revealed here about Judas, and what is the drift of his words? What do you think is going on here?
Well,
So Judas was the one freaking out over the perfume and was more concerned with the money wasted.
Yeah, he's saying, don't waste this money, don't waste this money.
he's the son of perdition all the way.
Yeah. And all the while, he's not, John says, this is what John relates about his fellow disciple. He says that Iscariot wasn't really concerned about the poor because he was a thief and he had the money box and he used to pilfer what was put into it. So I'm asking, tell me directly what's behind Judas' words and what's behind John's words. What are we saying here exactly?
He's saying that Judas is pretty low down the whole time. That's why I said he was the son of perdition. the
There
whole
you go. All right.
But
Yeah.
did John not know that?
At the time,
Before Judas betrayed Jesus for the money.
I'm pretty sure John had his inklings, before, in all likelihood. And everybody deals with life in retrospect. In other words, we have things happen, things that go on, and then we'll get together and we'll talk about it and unpack what we remember and say, oh, I get it now. That's why she acted like that she did when I said, thus and so. We do that a lot. And I think this is partly what went on with John is afterwards he gets reflecting about everything that's transpired and he goes, you know what? That dude was stealing all the time.
He was always out of money, and that's
You
why.
know?
You
And
can't
that's probably what was behind that stupid remark he made about the nard that Mary put on Jesus' feet that time when we were down there at Lazarus' house. So I think that's what John is doing is he's revealing what he's come to see. Probably, at least in part, post-resurrection. He probably had the inkling of it as life was going by. That's the way we are. We a lot of times have our suspicions. We have a uneasiness and itchiness about stuff that happens. We don't really know why, when it's going past. But later we look back and we go, oh, yeah, I get it now. Therefore Jesus said, let her alone that she may keep it for the day of my burial. And so I want you to look at this question, this statement right here. Therefore Jesus said, let her alone so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. What do you suppose was meant by that, keep it for the day of my burial? Let's keep going. For you always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. What does Jesus mean when he says, keep it for the day of my burial?
Because before they put him in the tomb, they wrap him in linens and perfume.
That it's going to occur.
Wait a minute, you're pretty close. If you'd have stopped right there, you'd have been perfect. They wrapped him in linens, and then what did they do? They came back the next day, or 2 days later rather, at sunrise to complete that. To finish putting they took spices with them, and they were going to take care of that on the day that they found out he was alive from the dead. And so they never got a chance to actually do this. And so in a certain sense you could say, Mary gets to keep this event because she cared enough to anoint my body when she had a chance while I was alive, and she never got the chance. And everybody that was grieving for me, later on, thinking forwardly, everybody that grieved for me didn't get a chance to do that. But Mary did.
So it was like a fail-safe to guarantee that they were going to go and see that he was keeping to his word of rebuilding the temple in 3 days.
I don't know quite where you're headed with that.
As in, so Jesus is a special case, is he not? In terms of crucifixion and the centurion, the Roman centurion, even though he had no actual evidence other than the Jews hating him, the Jewish religious leaders hating him, they wanted Jesus dead so much that they released the other Jesus that was, I don't really recall why he was in prison, but they would rather have the literal one that was in there for being sinful or breaking laws released so that Jesus of Nazareth could go in there and be punished just because they hated him for, in their perspective, being a slight against their religious views, him claiming to be the Messiah. So in this instance, even though the Roman soldier had no proof, which was kind of their code of ethics, I guess you could say, in terms of punishing people or putting them to death, he went ahead and put them to death anyways. So does that mean that they would follow through with their typical ceremonies, burial ceremonies?
I think that's part of what the question seems to be. Does Mary's act of putting nard on Jesus' feet, does it fall in line with custom towards people who have died? And I think that's absolutely right. That is what's going on. She is essentially completing ahead of time, forwarding, so to speak, that act to the day when Jesus was raised from the dead. That should have been the day that they were able to get together and put those spices on him. That's what they intended. You can read that as you get through the Gospels. You'll read that that's what the ladies were doing when they went to the tomb. They were going to complete the preparation of his body for laying there in the tomb.
If they followed Jesus' words there, the day of my burial, not the third day of my burial.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and they didn't get time. If you remember that the
Sabbath.
account was that the Sabbath was the next day, and it was getting towards sunset, so they didn't have time to get those spices on him, and so they put it off until after Sabbath, and then when they came back, well, he was alive from the dead. So that was the way that ran, and so yeah, actually that would have been correct, that they would have wanted to do that the very day he was put away. Good point. What does it mean, keep it for the day of my burial? We talked about that probably long enough now. A large crowd of the Jews then learned that he was there, and they came not for Jesus' sake only, but that they might also see Lazarus, whom he raised from the dead. I just want to know, if you knew that somebody had definitely been raised from the dead, there was no question. They'd been dead 4 days, they already stank. And when somebody walked up and said, Lazarus, come forth, and a guy come out of the tomb, you cleaned him up, cleaned him off, and he's gone about life as normal. Wouldn't you want to talk to that guy?
When there's somebody that died and they got raised up, I don't know.
Yeah, I would want to. And so there was a lot of people that went out to see Lazarus because they heard this about him. You gotta be kidding me. This story's crazy. I'm going to go talk to that guy.
I don't want to ask the questions like, what was it like?
Yeah, exactly. What was it like? What did you experience? What was it like to come back? All of those questions had to be just beating the doors of your mind as you went to talk to him. But the chief priests, this is always half funny to me, this verse, but the chief priests planned to put Lazarus to death also, because on account of him, many of the Jews were going away and were believing in Jesus. So
Wait, so they were blaming that on Lazarus?
well, they didn't like the propaganda that Lazarus was providing. You know, Lazarus walking around is sort of bad advertising for their point of view. You know,
Jesus could do.
if everybody knows that Lazarus died. You know how many Jews, you remember from our story last week, that all the Jews, even from Jerusalem, went out to grieve with Mary and Martha about Lazarus dying. They all knew he was dead, and now he's walking around, and everybody knows that it's because Jesus said, Lazarus come forth, that he's walking around. Well, the Pharisees are trying to get Jesus' popularity to die down. Please let it die down. We can't have this stuff. And we'd like to, in fact, kill Jesus, but now his advertisement is walking around the streets of Bethany, bold as day. We got to get rid of him too. So let's go kill him again. So there you go. That's their motive. It's a crazy motive, but I believe that's what it is. That Lazarus is bad advertisement for our side. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but my goodness, I see these things play out in front of me every day. It's not hard for me to land on this. On the next day, the large crowd who had come to the feast, when they heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, took the branches of the palm trees and went out to meet him and began to shout, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, even the King of Israel. Things are certainly not going the way of the temple crowd, the scribes and the Pharisees and chief priests. This is not what they wanted to hear the people say. They are out here saying that Jesus is actually to be regarded as somebody who is coming in God's name, and he is our king. Wow. Why do you think Jesus is receiving this acclaim right now? Why are people acting this way?
Well, the Lazarus example, I mean, he was, but a lot of people saw what happened with Lazarus, and so there a lot of people are believing that, and I think that Jesus has been telling people basically that's who he is, and they're believing it.
Right. People were beginning to believe in him, and so they wanted to say this about him. I think there are a lot of things that may have led to this. I think some people were probably on a spiritual plane and saying, you know, we love what he's saying to us. We understand that he is from God, and that the life that comes into us as we listen and obey his words, that is what we're supposed to do. But I think there's another crowd too that has been there at the feeding of the 5,000, and they said to themselves, my goodness, if we have a supply chain where, you know, if we've gone to fight with the Romans, my goodness, we'll have food at any time we want it. And not only that, look now, if somebody dies on the battlefield, kapow, he gets us alive again, and we can go fight some more. You know, so there's all kind of sort of militant king of Israel sorts of things that have been going on for the mind of those who are of this nature. And do you have any evidence that there were actually people who thought sort of like militantly during that time?
Well, besides Peter cutting off the guy's ear.
Okay. There was another Simon. What was his last name? Simon the Zealot. Simon the Zealot. You bet. Zealot was a guy that was absolutely, his intention was to rid themselves of Roman rule. So right there in the 12, there was a zealot that wanted to have things differently and was, you know, eager to see the kingdom of God mean that now we didn't have to put up with Roman rule anymore. Of course, I believe that his mind got changed over time, but certainly it was that kind of thinking was present in the people, and that's a good evidence of it. Okay, Jesus, finding a young donkey, sat on it, as it is written, "Fear not, daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt." So is Jesus refusing this acclaim or accepting it?
He's accepting it.
He's accepting it. Jesus is saying, you're right. I'm that guy. King of Israel. These things his disciples did not understand at the first. But when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things were written of him and that they had done these things to him. What do you think that Jesus' disciples missed? John is clearly saying that his disciples missed something here. What did they miss?
In this particular instance,
Yeah.
well, they didn't, it seems to me that they didn't think that he was going to have this triumphant entry right now. That's not, they were thinking he was going to keep a low profile so he didn't get killed.
Possibly, that's certainly true. I think that the disciples were just far enough from understanding the full impact and import of everything that was going on, that this all went on in front of them, and they really just kind of had a duh moment. I mean, it just escaped them. They didn't realize, well, they really do want to make Jesus, actually, they want to make him king. They actually want to do this. And then Jesus, in return, is actually accepting the acclaim of it. And I think that just sort of got past them. They didn't quite gather it in. That in effect, this was Jesus' coronation moment, if you like. This was Jesus taking the throne of Israel. And they missed it. They didn't quite put it together, piece it together until afterwards. And then they realized, you know what? He did become king of Israel, and it happened this way when that day that he came down into Israel on the back of that donkey. Jesus clearly made things look just like it did in the Old Testament when the king was coming to town.
He was fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely. He was fulfilling prophecy. All right. So the people who were with him when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to testify about him. Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If you were there when Lazarus came forth, I would be the guy that would go around and say, man, I got to tell you what happened last week. Dude, you're just gonna be so blown away by what I have to tell you. Dude, I know him. You know him probably. You've heard of Lazarus down there in Bethany. Yeah, well, he died. You knew that, right? Yeah. Well, you know, he'd been in the tomb about 4 days, and this cat Jesus comes down comes across the Jordan from the other Bethany over there, and walks up to the tomb and says, Lazarus, come forth. And I'm telling you what, Lazarus did come out of that tomb. Jesus made him open the tomb, and he said, Lazarus, he came out, man. So people were telling this story all over that area. And for this reason, it says, verse 18, for this reason also the people went and met him because they heard that he had performed this sign. So they not only wanted to see Lazarus, they wanted to see Jesus. They wanted to see who had done this. And I just asked this question, where are people learning that Jesus has raised Lazarus? Well, of course, from those that saw it and went out and told about it. So the Pharisees said to one another, you see that you are not doing any good. Look, the world has gone after him. What do you think the Pharisees meant by this remark?
They started believing in his teachings and following him?
I'd like that, but that's not what they did. That would have been rational. But that's not, I think, what they're saying.
In a way, it looks like they're saying that we all know that Jesus is crazy, and everybody else seems to be crazy too.
Well, remember that little scene that I set up just a few moments ago, that you're in the temple and you're maybe a Nicodemus type guy, and you really are an admirer of Jesus, and somebody comes up to you and grabs you by the shoulder and says, listen, right now I'm going to tell you, you've got to tell us when you know where Jesus is. You've got to let on where he is. We got to find out, man. We got to know. Because we're going to kill that cat, is the rest of the story. And, you know, if you're talking to Nicodemus or somebody like him, you anticipate that because you're temple authority, they're going to go, oh, yeah, I get it. We probably ought to help out in this. But that's not what happens, is it? Nobody's helping out.
Well, unless they're blind, they know where he's at.
Well, I suppose. But the Pharisees are basically saying, look, everything we've tried, we're just losing the crowds anyway. Everybody is going after him anyway. We've tried to paint him black, and everybody sees him as white. And we can't help, we don't know what's going on. Why is that? What do you think the Pharisees meant by this remark? Now there were some Greeks among those who were going up to worship at the feast. These came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida of Galilee, and began to ask him, saying, Sir, we wish to see Jesus. Philip, being from up there in Bethsaida, maybe he had more, looked like maybe the way he was dressed or something made him more approachable for Gentiles. I don't know. But anyway, they came to him and said, look, we want to see Jesus. And I got to tell you, one of my favorite things, every now and then you'll hear, as a preacher, you'll be around other preachers and you'll hear this and that about settings and so forth. One thing I heard on a pulpit was there was a clock put in right in the pulpit, so you would always know what time it was. Quit on time was the idea. But there was also one that says, right across the face of that pulpit, it says, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." And I think that's awesome. That's what these people wanted to do. They wanted to come and see Jesus, and Philip was addressed by them. Philip comes and tells Andrew and Philip, "Come and tell Jesus." And Jesus answers them saying, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified." I'm not quite sure how that follows, to be honest. In other words, why is it that Jesus responds to this statement that there's some guys out here who are Gentiles and they want to see you? Why does Jesus now say, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified"? Maybe there was something about his interest in reach, how far his message would go. I don't know, but it's I don't know what to make quite of those two things parked next to each other. And then we don't really address the Gentiles. Jesus answers them saying, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified." What do you think he means by glorified? What does glory of God mean? Well, let's keep moving. "Truly, truly," Jesus says, "I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." Is this a pattern for gaining the glory of God right here?
Sometimes.
Could be.
Well, I guarantee you in the plant world, it's probably the only way. Right? I mean, yeah, once a plant has reached maturity, the only way that it's going to be a beautiful plant again is if the seed of it falls into the earth and dies, so to speak, and it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. I'm saying this is a pattern for gaining the glory of God, and you should be quiet about this thought and reference it and think it again and again. It behooves us to do this. I think there are times, certainly in my life, when the next thing I should do is be quiet and not say nothing, because all I'm going to do by trying to boost my own self at this point is I'm going to lose the real development that's going on. Let yourself not get the glory once in a while. Let yourself be quiet and let things develop. This is a pattern, I think, for gaining the glory of God. He who loves his life loses it, Jesus says, and he who hates his life in this world will keep it to eternal life. Explain hates his life. Did Jesus love his life?
Well, I know,
Not
what he's saying is you gotta live for others and for God instead of for yourself. I mean, that's what it means. It's pretty simple.
Okay, I would agree. What about what becomes of Jesus' life? What happens to Jesus' life as he's speaking of life right here? He loves his life, loses it. He who hates his life in this world will keep it to life eternal.
He's looking forward to his life with God.
Okay, that's true, but I'm after this right here, hates his life. And I'm after it because we don't like it. And I think it takes some stick-to-itiveness here to get this.
I don't think he hated his life.
I think he did.
I don't think
I don't think he did.
Are you taking it talking about?
Because if someone like Jesus hated his life, why would he want to do all those miracles for people and follow God's righteousness?
That's
Okay,
exactly why he hated it.
I'm
though,
with
because
you,
he was
I'm
doing
with you.
miracles and they still hated him. They still persecuted him. They were
Now,
still against him.
let's talk about it a minute, because I think we're getting close here. But here's the thing, if you have two people that are in your life and you're going to choose which one of them gets to live sort of the rest of their natural life, and the other one has to die in the next 20 minutes. And you make public what your choice is. Which one is going to say at the end of that choice, he hates me? The one that's going to die in 20 minutes, right? Yeah. And that's what happened to Jesus. He had to make a choice whether I'm going to live out my natural life or whether I'm going to die now because it's the right thing to do. He hated his life in that respect. He loved something far more than he loved his own life.
Right.
And that's kind of the thing that you have to pick up on in the New Testament when it talks about this choice. Because there are other places in the New Testament, for instance, it tells us that we have to, if we'll be a follower of Jesus, we'll have to hate our mother and our father and our brother. See? Well, it's not exactly like you got to have this anger and vim and ire at them. That's not it at all. It's that you have to love Jesus and choose him rather than them.
You have to place him first, not necessarily not love him at all.
Right. This is kind of an Eastern way of seeing hate that you kind of need to get a hold of, because it has to do with an actual choice, not so much with an emotion. So that's why I responded to you as I did, that Jesus, I think, did really hate his life in this Eastern fashion. He chose me instead of himself. He chose you instead of himself.
Isn't the saying goes though, you can't love somebody else if you don't love yourself?
Well, here's where, I'm okay with trying to spend some time in that department, which to me is the world's equations of what love is. But ultimately, I'm dealing with Jesus, because that's who I love. That's who chose me, and I'm choosing him. And so when it comes to self-love, I don't even depend upon my own self to love myself. Because I will be honest with you, as I look at Jesus and attempt to love him, I don't like myself so very much. But here's the catch. I'm not dependent upon myself for my source of caring about me, because there's the cross right there, and that's the price that God paid for me. I either take his word for the value and worth of my life, or I take my feelings. I'll take him. He has the last word. What he says goes. He says I'm of tremendous value, of tremendous worth, and that there's nothing that should stop me from glorifying and pleasing God and making life better for as many other people as I can. That gives me a value as a human being, that going around and patting myself on the back and saying, well, the greatest love of all is found, whatever that Whitney Houston song was she used to sing about this great love, and that she found it, and it was a love for herself. Poor thing, she ended up, how she ended up. Well, I'm saying that okay, we can play in that department a while, but ultimately, the math that matters is right here. Jesus chose me and I chose him. He chose my life over his own. I'm going to respond in kind. That means, in effect, then, if he says if I say he hates his life in that Eastern sense that I drew out for you, that he chooses somebody else's life over his, well, then I respond in kind. And now I hate my life in response to him, because he's got to become first. He who loves his life, Jesus just lays it right out there. He's basically saying this is true for me and true for you. He who loves his life loses it. He who hates his life in this world will keep it to eternal life. If you think back to what I said about Whitney Houston, she provided you an example of precisely what I'm saying. She loved herself. She died. She lost her life. Explained hates this life. Okay, there we did. We did it, and we got about 4 minutes by my clock. That clock back there, brothers and sisters, is late. It's
running a little behind.
yeah. Y'all are going to give me 10 minutes extra to preach on Sunday if you don't watch out. If anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there my servant will be also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. Another wonderful verse. There's verse after verse after verse in here is just so full, just packed in with import and meaning. If anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there my servant will be also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. What does this mean to be a servant? What does it mean, rather, to be a servant of Jesus? Anyone serves me, he must what? He has to follow. Where I am, where Jesus is, what?
There I am.
There the servant has to be too. You and I are not, we can chase after our own fun stuff and all that, we often do. But if we would really truly be a disciple of Jesus, if we would be a servant of Christ, we have to say, Jesus is first, and where he is, there I will be. What he is doing, that I will do. And if we give ourselves to that, if we make our life like that, then we begin to know his work in us. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. Now, I don't think we have enough time to get there. So we're going to back up and find it from here. If anyone serves me, he must follow me. Where I am, there my servant will be also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. What are you ultimately living for then? If you look down to the bottom of the verse, what are you living for?
To serve God.
To serve God and to be honored
Honor.
by God. See, that's, I think, the big clue to a lot of the way we need to learn to behave in our lives. All of us do. I'm not a great example, but I want to become at least passably good at this. That I'm interested in what you think and how you feel and all that sort of thing, but only insofar as God is being glorified. That's all. Not insofar as I am being glorified, because that's not where I need to get my glory from. I need to get my glory and honor from God. And so I'm going to learn how to serve Jesus, to look and see what Jesus is doing, and then go do that. To be in those things that he does. And that's where I'm going to leave tonight's study. We're actually against the hour, so we're going to quit. Yes, Jim.
Isn't that what's expected of you to deserve God's grace?
Yeah, well, I think that's what happens when grace comes to you. As you live accepting the grace of God, you are motivated then to find the honor of God in that way. It's not so much that you get God's grace because you deserve it due to your living like this. It's the opposite direction. You get God's grace, and so you want to serve and to honor God. It's to live out of gratitude because that's the beauty of the cross. It's already been done. It's already been paid for. Keep looking at it, and you will be healed within. Your life will become servant to God and to Christ just automatically as you do that. So, yeah. There you go.
And just one last question, Mike.
Yes, sir?
Yeah,
Is that-
what should you ask?
Is that what you're saying when you were talking about the clock? Is that why your sermon lasted until 11:47 on Sunday.
Oh, yeah, that's